Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this simultaneous meeting of Babergh District Council Cabinet and Mid-Suffolk District Council Cabinet. I am Councillor John Ward, Leader of Babergh District Council, and also in attendance to my right is Councillor Susie Morley, Leader of Mid-Suffolk. We will jointly be chairing the meeting today. However, for reasons of efficiency, I will be leading the items. May I remind you of some domestic arrangements. Please ensure that you maintain social distancing from all other persons in the chamber and in the social areas. Please ensure that you wear a mask unless you are speaking or if you're unable to do so, and that you use the hand sanitizer and wipes provided. Please maintain social distancing at all times during the meeting and during any breaks. Please ensure that microphones are turned off when not in use. Please do not interrupt other speakers. If you are attending the meeting to speak or persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. Please ensure your mobile phones are on silent or switched off. Additionally, we will be using e-voting for this meeting on the modern.gov app. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the councillors to have consented to being filmed. By entering this meeting as a speaker, you are also consenting to being recorded by the council and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. The council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. I'd like now to move to the agenda, please. So item 1, apologies for absence.
Good morning, Chair. We have received apologies from Councillor Davis.
Thank you. Item 2, to receive declarations of pecuniary and non-pecuniary interest by members. Are there any to declare? Nope. Item 3 then is the first paper. We're moving on to paper BCA 21-9 to confirm the minutes of the Babergh Cabinet meeting held on the 8th of June 2021. I'll just go through these page by page, Babergh members. Page 9, page 10, page 11, page 12, page 13. Sorry, was that page 12, Councillor Busby?
Yep. Top line 9.7.
Yep.
I've been converted to Councillor Busy now.
Oh, you have? Yes.
I know I'm a busy bee, but it's the bee that's missing.
It is, yep. Thank you for that, Councillor Busby. Page 13. Page 14. Page 15. Page 16. And finally, page 17. Okay, so if there are no further questions, may I have a proposer, please? Councillor Busby. And a seconder, Councillor Holt. May we conduct the electronic vote, please?
Yes, if members could go to the electronic vote on their app and scroll down to the blue line, the vote is now in progress. Chair, that is 7 votes for.
Thank you. Councillor Morley.
The item MCA 21/8 is to confirm the minutes of the Mid-Suffolk Cabinet meeting held on the 7th of June. Do we have any points regarding the accuracy of the minutes? Page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10, page 11, page 12, can I have a proposer, please?
Happy to propose.
Thank you, Councillor Flatman. And can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Haddingham, thank you very much. I will now ask the Governance Officer to conduct the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, if you could please open the vote in the modern.gov app by clicking the plus sign in the top right of the agenda screen and select attendance and voting. The vote will now be in progress under the Babergh minutes. Chair, that is 9 votes for.
Thank you. Moving on to item 4, to receive notification of petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme.
None received.
Thank you. Item 5, questions by councillors.
Thank you, Chair. We have received questions from Councillor Jameson and Councillor Lindsay.
I will read out there are 3 questions, 2 from Councillor Jameson and 1 from Councillor Lindsay. I'll read out each question, and following the question, I'll ask Councillor Holt, Cabinet Member for the Economy, to respond. So Councillor Jameson's first question. The bid for external funding that was made for the park entrance, was this the bid for funding from the Land Release Fund? If it was, what land did we intend to release for the housing development? The land related to the Bellevue house being brought back into residential use and the old swimming pool site? Question mark. Councillor Holt.
Thank you, Chair. The bid was submitted prior to any marketing of the site, and due to the criteria of the bid, had to be drafted on the assumption there would be housing on the old swimming pool site and a refurbishment of the house as residential. This was an assumption made only for the purpose of the bid and had no impact on the open and transparent marketing process of the site.
Thank you, Councillor Holt. The next question. How are Babergh going to remedy the open space deficit in Sudbury when they are disposing of the open space that it does have?
Provision of new public open space, part of the new park entrance, means that only a very small percentage of public open space will be lost due to the recent sale of the adjacent site. It's important to recognise that there are a range of different types of open space, ranging from accessible natural green space to more formal parks and gardens. There will be significant new open space associated with Chiltern Woods.
Thank you, Councillor. And finally, Councillor Lindsay's question. The contract with the retirement homes developer says that the contract will not complete, i.e. we will not get payment, until planning permission is granted. It also says that we don't have to start work on the retaining wall and entrance until after completion, within 3 months. So why do we need to borrow money to do the retaining wall works before we have planning permission and before the sale to the developer completes?
Thank you. There will be a need to ensure we have forward funding monies before completion of the Churchill contract, as the lead time, or the lead-in time, actually commences works on site is several months before. The retaining wall is linked into the wider park entrance scheme and new cafe and toilets, and for all of those elements we will need to appoint a professional design team, including next level of design and structural stroke party wall assessments. Submit a planning application, independent to that being submitted by Churchill, and run a tender process for a contractor. If we do not start this work prior to completion of the Churchill contract, we will have insufficient time to meet the contract obligations to start on the site within 3 months.
Thank you, Councillor Holt. Next, item 6, matters referred by the Overview and Scrutiny or Joint Audit and Standards Committees.
Thank you, Chair. The Joint Overview and Scrutiny Committee has forwarded recommendations from the meeting that was held on Monday the 28th of June.
Thank you. Councillor Wellham.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is the item, the scrutiny review of the joint parking strategy process and timeline. At the Joint Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting on the 28th of June, members considered a report from Cassandra Clements, the Assistant Director for Environment and Commercial Partnerships. The Assistant Director pointed out that since the report had been written, the use of a specialist consultant to undertake much of the data collection and consultation work had been considered, and it was now proposed for those elements of the process to be undertaken by external consultants. This would enable several tasks to be carried out simultaneously. The timescale for the work would be significantly reduced. Members considered that the final report should be presented to Cabinet in June 2022 rather than December 2022. Members considered the proposed stakeholder engagement list and made a number of suggested additions which are listed in the recommendation which you have before you. I would like to draw your attention, Cabinet's attention, to the role that a parking strategy can play in encouraging walking, cycling and the use of public transport. The committee urged Cabinet to instruct officers to investigate issues around the introduction of residence parking schemes in both districts, including the potential for committing finance to such a scheme. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Welland. Do any Cabinet members from either Babergh or Mid-Suffolk have any questions? Councillor Holt.
I'll just pick up on a comment really. I'm pleased to hear that it's been brought forward 6 months from December to the June. I think it's a very important programme that we're undertaking here, and I think it's the quicker we get the feedback on it, the better for everyone.
Yes, thank you. I agree with that. If there are no further questions... Oh, Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I also am pleased to see that it's being brought forward. If we've got consultants involved, we will tell them a timeline and they can keep to that timeline. So I was pleased to see that. Obviously, it goes to Cabinet briefing, I think, on the 2nd of August, so we'll be discussing that. Just one comment. I was a little bit surprised that, bearing in mind the problems that we've got in the district, and I'm sure you've got the same in Mid-Suffolk, about people parking on green verges and green open space areas, that this wasn't identified as something for discussion at Cabinet. So I shall be raising that myself when it comes to Cabinet. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. If there are no further questions, then thank you, Councillor Welland, for your report, and we'll pick up on that when it comes to Cabinet. So item 7 next is the forthcoming decisions list. Does anyone have any questions on the content of that? We've all had a chance to see it several times, so if not, then I will move on. Okay then. Item 8, paper BCA 2110 and paper MCA 219, the Leisure, Sport and Physical Activity Strategy. I'll now invite the Mid-Suffolk Cabinet Member for Health and Wellbeing to introduce the Mid-Suffolk report.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm delighted to introduce this report, which is the refreshed Leisure, Sport and Physical Activity Strategy for both Babergh and Mid-Suffolk District Councils. Since the Council's LSPA strategy was adopted in 2017, significant change has taken place, both in terms of investment and delivery of development identified in the strategy, but in addition there have been numerous changes at a national, regional and local level that we must take into account. In Mid-Suffolk, for example, we've invested 1.2 million in gym facilities at Mid-Suffolk Leisure Centre, 200,000 for the refurbishment of Stradbrook Swimming Pool and Fitness Centre, and 60,000 in gym facilities at Debenham Sports and Leisure Centre. Alongside this, considerable funding has been provided to village halls, sports grounds and facilities, and voluntary community and social enterprise organisations to enhance facilities and increase opportunities for local people to participate in a wide range of activities that promote fitness, health and wellbeing, and other aspects of people's lives through our community grant scheme and Section 106 funding across the two districts. In addition, numerous substantial changes at a wider level include the new projected housing numbers across both districts from the emerging joint local plan, changes in how people are participating in exercise and using facilities. There have been two important national publications that have highlighted changes to participation trends in both the structure and forms of sport, leisure and physical exercise. Similarly, the impact of COVID-19 also means that there needs to be a greater focus on how clubs and activities can recover after the pandemic and secure their long-term sustainability. Finally, the refreshed strategy will also be a key part of the new Wellbeing strategy, with strong links as well to our community strategy. In response to these changes, the refresh of the strategy will help to establish an overall vision for the future of sport and physical activity in Babergh and Mid-Suffolk. It will define the required strategic outcomes or end results. It will identify the strategic objectives that need to be achieved to help get the right results, and will develop the specific actions required to meet the objectives and to support delivery. The strategic outcomes and supporting strategic objectives fall into three distinct but interrelated themes, which form the building blocks of the updated strategy. These are: what outcomes do the councils want to see and for whom? What infrastructure, places and spaces are needed to contribute to these outcomes? And who are the key partners and enablers, and how should we work with them to help contribute to these outcomes? In terms of the 6 strategic outcomes themselves, these are: reduced levels of inactivity among communities and in localities experiencing greater health inequalities; increased opportunities for all residents to move through an accessible, diverse and inclusive programme of activities; sustainable community sport, leisure and physical activity facilities that enable and support all residents to be active; green and open spaces providing formal and informal opportunities for all residents to be everyday active; a strong, sustainable and strategically aligned ecosystem of partnerships supporting all residents to be more active; and finally, a skilled, knowledgeable and enabled workforce and volunteer base supporting communities to be more active. In terms of the strategy itself, in addition to a significant infrastructure pipeline outlined in section 7.3 of the strategy, we've also have numerous leisure and wellbeing schemes that are ongoing. These range from our Active Schools programme to our Active Wellbeing scheme, which is aimed at people over the age of 50 who are inactive, and are also working with GP surgeries and others to encourage social prescribing. As I hope you can see, a substantial amount of work has gone into the refresh of this strategy, including comprehensive analysis of supply and demand across the district and extensive stakeholder engagement, which is set out in Appendices B and C of this report. In particular, we've had direct engagement with a broad range of clubs and societies, including 44 strategic stakeholders, 11 sporting national governing bodies, and have had more than 250 responses to bespoke surveys, which is considerably higher than the previous engagement for the 2017 strategy. Although branded as a refresh, this strategy represents a substantial amount of work, and I would like to add my personal thanks to both officers and the Sport, Leisure and Culture Consultancy for their efforts in such an enormous undertaking. And on that positive note, I'm very happy to propose the recommendation set out in section 3 of the report and hope that both cabinets will support it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Richardson. May I have a seconder from Mid-Suffolk, please? Councillor Flatman.
Thank you, Chair. Very happy to second the paper. This council is determined to invest in our residents' physical well-being and mental health well-being. And as you can see by the investment that has just been read out, we're taking this very seriously, and the refresh has come at just the right time when we're all very aware of what the pandemic has left on our doorstep for us to cope with, and we will carry on doing so. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Flatman. In the absence of the Babergh Cabinet Member for Communities, who unfortunately is unable to be present and here with us today, I just wanted to say a few words from a Babergh perspective on this paper. Clearly, we've already been investing quite a bit since the original strategy was adopted in 2017. Specifically in Babergh, there are 2 big projects. We've invested over £2 million in building the new swimming facilities in Hadley and £2.4 million in an extension and refurbishment of the Kingfisher Leisure Centre in Sudbury. There's also been considerable funding provided to village halls, sports grounds, facilities and voluntary community and social enterprise organisations so that they can enhance their facilities and increase opportunities for local residents. Just a quick word about the Hadley pool. I went there on Friday for the official opening, and it's an amazing facility. It really is something that a town as small as Hadley, to have a facility like that, they should be really proud. And I know it is getting used very much, and it's absolutely wonderful to see. But having spent all that money in Sudbury and Hadley, we do want to focus on the whole of the district, particularly in the east, over towards the Shotley Peninsula, and in the centre of the district. We know that we've got population pressures in Grantham, Capel and East Bergholt, and we do need to try to improve the facilities in those locations. And we want to work with our schools and all with the schools, both public, the state schools and also the independent schools, because we do have 2 independent schools within the district in the east who we can hopefully work with. There are a number of priority infrastructure projects that we've listed, and we want to proceed with those. And we've got all sorts of funding sources, community grants, locality awards, SIL, and then we work with partners, and also the ability to seek external funding. So I'm happy to propose this paper from a Babergh perspective, and I'd like to ask for a seconder from Babergh. Councillor Arthey, thank you very much. Okay, so firstly, I'll ask for questions from either the Babergh or Mid-Suffolk members. So starting with Babergh, any Babergh members have any questions on this paper? Okay, any Mid-Suffolk members have any questions at this stage before we move into debate? Right, I'll then ask the chairs of scrutiny if they have any questions. So firstly, Councillor McLaren, do you have a question?
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, don't know what happened there. Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure who I should address the question to, but the report talks about community engagement. I'm the ward member for Holbrook, what was the Holbrook Sports Centre, and nobody approached me to ask my view, which I think is an oversight, given the dramatic end to the provision in Holbrook. I'd just like to say that Holbrook provided a service to the whole of Shotley Peninsula and to places like Bentley, East Bergholt and Ipswich. And I'm a bit perturbed by the lack of detail in the report about Holbrook, because it had a very dramatic end at the beginning of the pandemic. There was no consultation with the people of Holbrook and the registered members of that facility, and I think they deserve some discussion, in a public discussion in relation to the facts. I have been doing some investigation over the past 5 months into the facts of the Holbrook Academy Sports Centre, and I'm trying to get to the truth and the facts on behalf of my residents, and I am unhappy that nobody has pursued that. And if somebody on the in the consultancy that was asking the questions, I would have welcomed an opportunity to have participated and given my views. But I would ask perhaps Babergh Cabinet to consider some sort of public discussion, to be recommending some public discussion for the people of Holbrook. But in fact, you see, it's the whole peninsula, so that's a population of 8,500 people, and I think those people deserve an answer. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren. So I guess the question is, are we able to have some further engagement with the communities around Holbrook on the peninsula, and also further engagement with the Academy? I don't know, Fiona or Vicky, if either of you, Fiona, can you pick up on that, please?
Yes, I'm happy to pick that up. Just in terms of the engagement with, for the purposes of this refresh, all parish councils were sent a questionnaire, as were, I believe, all schools and any other sports clubs. We did also host 2 all-member workshops where obviously comments were invited about any of these things. Specifically, I can't answer about the past, but I think there's absolutely an action in here around working more closely with schools, we'd be happy to pursue that.
Thank you. Thank you, Fiona. Councillor Weller.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I welcome this report. I welcome the strategy. As the Cabinet Member for Community said, action is urgent. We need to come out of, as we come out of the pandemic. But I've got a few queries around Stow Upland, a few queries around Warpit and Elmswell. And I think, although these are specific queries, I think they are general across Mid-Suffolk. So bear with me if you would. Yes, so presumably you talked to Stow Upland High School, but there seems to be no community use agreement between the John Milton Academy Trust and the community, which is disappointing. We seem to be able to make absolutely no progress on that. So how can Mid-Suffolk District Council assist in negotiating an agreement? Do you agree that the districts have a role in trying to ensure such agreements are put in place? If I can turn to the high school grassed areas, Stow Upland Falcons Football Club use all of the grass space at the high school, so how will other sports be accommodated? There are tennis courts which haven't been used, and it has been proposed they might be used for car parking. So how can they be brought into public use as tennis courts or even as a netball or whatever? And I just wonder if there is a greater difficulty, and perhaps somebody can comment on this, whether there is a greater difficulty in sharing facilities when schools achieve academy status. Our local experience is that it is much more difficult to talk to schools now than it was, say, 5 years ago, and we think that's possibly the reason. Planned housing growth. Yes, you need to apply planned housing growth, but it's underestimated for Stow Upland. There are approximately 700 new homes planned for the Ashes Farm development, just across the A14, a further 300 allocated in the draft local plan. The table in the document allows for 461 extra homes. I think 1,500 would be a more appropriate figure. So can the numbers be reassessed, please? And then there's a general query about the way that spaces are measured. I understand that for Elmswell and Warpit Ward, it's one of the lowest in the district, of only 0.3 indoor spaces per 1,000 residents. So the number, counting the number of spaces is very crude. For instance, in the Blackbourne Centre, there are 4 rooms which can be made into a large sports hall. So how have they been counted? Have they been counted as one, although they've got 4 separate uses? I think that needs to be looked at, not just there, but across the district. Is it not a better way to measure by floor space by square metres rather than number of spaces? There's 1 or 2 oddities in the report about the Blackbourne Centre, which is frequently mentioned as exemplary as a community facility, but the table makes it look otherwise. Elmswell Parish Council have just acquired more outdoor space to complement their existing space because there is an urgent need, and yet it's shown as only a medium-term goal in the strategies. Yeah, these are all examples of things locally, but I think they would be replicated across the district. And our underlying concern is that there needs to be officers based locally to pick up on these local issues, to update data and to lead on planning for the future. Are there sufficient staff available in these and similar roles to actually get on with some real delivery before the money from the coming out of the pandemic is all spent elsewhere? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Fiona or Harry, Councillor Richardson, which would you like to start on this?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, please. I think if I wrote down correctly, Councillor, I think I picked up 4 sort of key questions. The first, in terms of working with schools, I completely agree. I do think the District Council has a role to play in that particular space. In terms of some of the specifics that he mentioned, I suggest that might be a conversation that we follow up with officers after. In terms of what I think were questions 2 and 3 about some of the housing numbers and some of the measurements involved, I think because they are more technical questions associated with the evidence base, I think I'd need to go and provide a written answer outside of this meeting, because we'd need to speak with SLC to try and find exactly how they've arrived at some of those calculations. In terms of what I interpreted to be the 4th question about staffing numbers, I personally am confident, but I think at the end of the day that's a question that I will have to defer to the Chief Executive as Head of Paid Services in terms of the actual staffing for the Council. I think I've captured everything that was asked, but if there's anything else, then please do jump in. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Wellen.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, could we just look at one of the concerns is a heavy reliance on local councils and village halls and other community links. I looked through the objectives, 2.2, 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, 4.1, 4.2 and so on. There's a reliance on local councils having a role there. Do we know that there are resources at the local level to plan the projects and to make bids? It's all very well to say the money is going to be available, but experience across the district is that you need the volunteers in order to put together the bids, in order to get the money for the project. So I think that there's a need for, I don't know whether you call them locality officers, neighbourhood teams or whatever, people who are going to work side by side when we're allowed to, with the local people to put these bids together, who can't rely on the bids coming in. Well, they'll come in from the best resource local councils. And if I can turn to 4.3, which is support and promote clear, safe routes that enable confident, active travel and so on. Am I right in believing that the council has a key role in this work? Because it is important not only to have the facilities, but also to be able to travel to those facilities. I mean, it makes no sense to me that people will get into a car to travel half a mile in order to do a Zumba class, whatever Zumba is. We need people working at the local level to help with this and promoting this and putting the plans together. Thank you.
Councillor Richardson, would you like to?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Welling. In terms of the first question, yes, I completely agree. I think one of the key themes that runs throughout this document and underpins the strategy as a whole is the emphasis on needing to work in partnership with others, both parish, town councils, directly with sport clubs and groups themselves, to help implement this in practice. So obviously we are a player in this particular field, if you'll excuse the pun, but on the whole, partnerships is a key aspect of this. Obviously that will involve officer time from our perspective, but we want this to be as open and accessible a piece of work or pieces of work as possible, to ensure that what we are implementing is not just what we think is the right solution for local communities, but that they have their own buy-in and input in shaping how some of these provision takes place in practice. In terms of the second question around the sort of travel and non-use of vehicles, absolutely, I think that's a place where we do have a role. Again, that will involve working in partnership with Suffolk County Council Highways, but also we have our own role to play with the development of the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, which I think we're starting work on imminently, if memory serves. But we also have a sustainable travel officer working with us as well, and we've also been engaging with a number of groups, such as Love to Ride, for example, which encourages the use of or the uptake of cycling, not just for recreational or leisure purposes, but also for the purposes of just general travel more broadly. So yes, I completely agree, that's very important, and I hope that answers your queries.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson, for those full responses. Right, anyone else have any questions? I've got 2 hands up there. Sorry, I can't see.
It's Councillor Mellon.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't recognise you under your mask. Sorry. Councillor Mellon.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions. Obviously, this strategy has a number of far-reaching and strategic objectives, I would like to ask, are there the resources and that staff and funding to deliver it? And then secondly, on the action plan, which is in recommendation 3.2, who's going to be involved in developing this? When will it be completed and the implementation start? Could there be some quick gains at the early stage of implementation, and will there be key performance indicators included? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mellon. Councillor Richardson, would you like to respond?
Yes,
Thank
certainly. Thank you, Councillor Mellon. First question in terms of resources. Again, for the staffing perspective, I'd have to defer to the Chief Exec as Head of Paid Services. But in terms of funding, I am reasonably confident that we will have the financial support available to see this delivered in full. Partly because of the relative position that Mid-Suffolk is in terms of we've already, as part of the previous iteration of the strategy, been able to invest significant sums of money across the district, and I see no reason why that couldn't continue into the future, especially because we've already, as I'm sure the Cabinet is aware, put £1 million behind the wellbeing priority that this Council has, and we'll be bringing further information about how that money is going to be spent forward over the coming months. So I think that will tie in very nicely with what was already announced in the budget in February, and then this new strategy, which will also come to the full Council at the end of this month. In terms of the specifics around the action under 3.2, again, I think that's something I would have to say is taken up with officers outside of the meeting, because what that section of the report is talking about is the high level actions. So we wouldn't necessarily see the specifics around things like KPIs as part of this document. This does set out the broader strategic outcomes and objectives that we want to see, but the more specifics will have to be taken forward at a later date. But I'm sure we can follow that up with officers if that's helpful. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. Chief Executive, would you like to pick up on the staffing question?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Richardson. Draw me in twice, so I thought the second attempt I'll come in. So just in terms of the staffing position, it's a constantly fluxing position. Obviously, to sit here today and say we have all the staff we need to deliver all of your ambitions wouldn't be correct, because you'll change the ambitions and we'll therefore have to stretch our staffing complement accordingly. Having said that, we are actively recruiting at the moment to locality officers of the type that Councillor Wellham referred to. So that should give some confidence in this regard. I don't know whether Fiona would like to come in just to add to what I've been saying as well.
Yes, so Vicky, our corporate manager for communities, has just appointed to an assistant manager role for sport and wellbeing, and their role very much will be about taking forward this particular strategy and developing an action plan. But as has already been said, they may be leading it, and there will be other officers within Vicky's team who will be supporting, but it is very much a collaboration between local councils, local sports clubs, and of course volunteers, who are absolutely key and always have been in delivering sport and wellbeing activities.
Thank you, Fiona. Right. Councillor Maybury, you had your hand up. Would you like to ask a question, please?
Yes, do I
Would you come and sit on the front here?
No.
Thank you.
I don't think you'll still be able to hear me, or can you?
Yes, we can hear
okay?
you, yes.
Thank you. Can I just point out that sadly those of us who were behind the screen could not hear Councillor Holt, we could not hear Mid-Suffolk Councillor for Sport either. We've actually missed out on a lot of what was said. So hopefully I am not repeating a question for an answer that has already been stated. Right. Considering I was involved with the previous sport and leisure strategy, I found this really interesting. However, there are lots of areas where being pedantic, there are spelling mistakes, there are also names that are incorrect. I have never ever heard of Chilton, T-O-N, primary school before.
Councillor Maybury, we'll pick up on errors like this at another time, but can you just focus on questions, please?
Well, I'm asking where that primary school currently is, please. That's the first one. I think the perception has changed for physical activity, and I think that does need to be encouraged. However, there are no specifics for the older generations, and that was mentioned that there are older people within our area. We do have some bowls clubs, yes, but there's been no mention of croquet and ball, which has been actively promoted in areas where I live, so I would take that back. There are lots of questions, particularly, are we going to be expecting extra funding for our particular wards to encourage this? Do you want me to go through all the questions?
How many are there?
Probably about 10. You know me, Councillor.
Pick 3 of the most important, please.
Right, okay. Right, okay. You talk about Chiltern Woods. This is not in the centre of Sudbury, and for those older persons who are enjoying living in the urban area of Sudbury, for the reasons that there are facilities there, such as all the shops, walking distance to some of the leisure facilities, this will actually encourage motorised travel. So why has there not been an actual area in Sudbury identified for such physical activity? This is going to be really difficult to pick out the real 3. There are also points within the consultation that talks about all sports halls on education sites. They are not. Acton Village Hall is actually a sports hall. However, that causes us severe problems because if they wish to use it for sports, we cannot use it for a meeting room. So that also needs to be identified, I feel. And my question is there going to be the opportunity to actually split some sports halls from village halls, and will funding be available? There is no mention of creating new wildlife areas which would increase mental health through the ability of people actually walking around these sites on a regularly, and also to encourage our biodiversity. I think we could actually use that within it. There was also a comment I did hear about cycling. It is definitely too dangerous to cycle on the roads within my ward. I'm sure Councillor Arthur would also support this. Just too dangerous. So are we going to look forward to new specialised cycling routes within all of the wards? I can go on, but I'll stop.
Thank you very much, Councillor Maybury. Actually, I've picked up 6 questions so far. One was facilities specific for the older generation. The second was around extra funding for this. The third was something to do with additional facilities in the centre of Sudbury to lessen the need to travel to the Chiltern Woods development when it's built. The fourth was separating sports halls from village halls and whether there's going to be any funding for that. The fifth was around wildlife areas, and the sixth around specialist cycle routes. I think, well, in terms of numbers 5 and 6, wildlife areas will probably come under our biodiversity action plan, which there's a lot being said in that regarding wildlife areas. We're also embarking on a cycling and walking strategy. There'll be a task and finish group set up for that to develop that further. So I think that will be picked up there rather than within this document, although nonetheless there will be links between the two, I would guess. So in terms of the other 4, I was wondering whether either Fiona or Vicky could perhaps pick up on those 4. Is that possible?
I'm happy to start. I think you might need to come in and help. In terms of extra funding, I think that's one of the things that we'll be looking at as the next phase of the delivery plan. So just to reinforce the point, there are some priority or high-level actions here. Each of those high-level actions will have more detailed actions sitting under them, and then we'll be looking at monitoring and evaluation and funding for each of those sub-actions, if you like. In terms of in terms of the split between sports halls and village halls, again, I think that's something that will be looked at the next stage of work, but I think as with schools, it's about understanding the best management model for some of these spaces and facilities, and that's on a case-by-case basis, so it's difficult to answer specifically. And then in respect of facilities for an older generation, we've deliberately looked at creating a strategy which is about activity for all, but no doubt, again, there'll be specific actions under the more detailed action plan to follow, which will be around our older residents. And I think that's the same answer for Sudbury as well. Whilst there's some priority action areas picked out, obviously every opportunity to look at increasing leisure, sport and physical activity in any of our places will be picked up.
Thank you, Fiona. Thank you, Councillor Maybury. I'm now going to open up the item for debate. So firstly, Babergh members, does anyone wish to contribute to the debate? Councillor Arthey.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. Firstly, something echoing. Firstly, as a result of what Councillor McLaren said, really, and also Margaret Maybury kind of made a bit of a reference to it, and that is the consultation that's taken place with members already. And I may have got this wrong, but I thought that the 2 councillor workshops at the end of April were open to all members of both councils, so that members could participate and give their views. Linked to that, because it was a point that was brought up at those workshops, was the older population and the deconditioning of them because of COVID, and we've probably all seen the effects somewhere. And that, I think, is addressed in the strategy at 3.3.2 onwards. So, I mean, that is picked up. I'm not quite sure how much more Councillor Maybury would like to see done, but it is picked up in the strategy. And lastly, I was just going to comment on the covering report at 4.2 and echo some of the things that you said, Chairman, right at the beginning. And that is with regard to the cross-council working group that was set up. I certainly took part in that. I'm not sure how many other members here today did. But we could not have imagined in 2017 that we would have achieved so much within 4 years. You particularly referred to Hadley Swimming Pool, and I agree with you there. That is a massive achievement. But all of the other work that we've heard Mid-Suffolk say that they've achieved in their district, and the work to the Kingfisher that you referred to as well. I mean, I really do think we've done incredibly well over the last 4 years, and that's full credit to the Cabinet members involved and our staff that have made it happen. So thanks to them.
Thank you, Councillor Arthur. Yes, and I know that the communities in Sudbury and Hadley certainly appreciate that investment and what Babergh is doing for those towns. Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Arthey. I also was involved in that review that we did of the strategy in 2017, and we've come a huge way. And it's not just in actions; it's our approach as well that's really, really improved over the last few years. I feel this refresh is a very positive approach, and perhaps today we've tended to talk more about the next stages of the strategy rather than the document itself. Although relevant, will certainly be discussed when we get to that particular stage. In regards to Sudbury, we mustn't forget the Kingfisher in Sudbury that provides many, many facilities. Not quite so many during COVID, I will admit, because they've been closed for some of that time. But once they get up and running completely, they will be providing a lot of facilities for all age groups including the more older in our community. So we mustn't forget that we have got that right in the centre of Sudbury. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Does anyone else from Babergh wish to? Councillor Holt.
Yeah, I'd just like to mention the whole sort of side of things, and I think it does highlight within the report the sort of we rely on the sports centres to provide the facilities, and yet we have no direct control over them, obviously. So the engagement we have with them is key. But at any time they could pull that, and I think we have to, when looking at this, almost have a provision should that happen. I'm not quite sure how we go about it, but if those sports centres pull the plug, then we are left really in a big deep hole with a lack of facilities. And I think that's the one difficult thing I can see in here, that to try and get over. How do you negotiate? Do we take a contract? Do we take a lease? Do we take some sort of a legal commitment? I don't know, but it will leave a big hole if for instance, in Cornard and Sudbury, both schools were to say, no, you're not going to use them, we're not open to the public.
Thank you, Councillor Holt. I think that clearly points to the fact that we do need extensive and full dialogue with those educational establishments, and that is part of this strategy. So that basically is the mitigating approach to that, and we will have to work as hard as we can with those educational establishments that are currently providing facilities, and also those that could in the future. Thank you. If there are no further comments from Babergh, then I'll move over to Mid-Suffolk. Do any Mid-Suffolk members? Councillor Flatman first, and then Councillor Fleming.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to reiterate what officers have said, and Councillor Arthur. This is a high-level strategy. The delivery plans are to come. If we were going to mention every village in every ward, we'd be, well, how long would the strategy be? We can't do it. It's all to come. And you know, we've taken on we're going to have locality officers. They will be working on the ground with the volunteers. We will deliver some of this in our communities. We are working with our with our contractors at the leisure centres to deliver some of this in the community. You know, it's not going to happen tomorrow, but there's some quick wins coming. Watch this space. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flatman. I totally agree with that. Councillor Fleming.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I absolutely welcome this strategy, and I think it represents a fundamental shift in how we think about sport and leisure and how we intend to invest in it, which is the most important thing. And I just want to pick up on a couple of points that people have made. Councillor Mellon raised the issue of funding, because this, as Councillor Flatman says, is a strategic document. And funding in the long term has got to be so important. And I just hope that we can engage actively with our partners to get enough funding for the long term to sustain the intentions of this strategy. And I'm talking about partners like the health service sectors, like the CCGs, primary care. We've got a major review of health and social care coming up with the white paper recently issued. And let's engage actively as districts in that dialogue so that we can be part of that, you know, that combined partnership approach to population health that I think is so important. Because this will take money, and it's where money actually, I think, should be spent. I also think that the partnership working with the voluntary and community sector is so important to make this work. I just wanted to say that in particular, that it's a wonderful strategy, but it does need reliable delivery and funding to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fleming. Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be brief. I commend this very detailed report, and clearly from paragraph 4.2, residents can see the level of investment made to date by both councils. We've set aside further significant fundings for 21-22 onwards to support our health and wellbeing strategy. I also welcome the private investment in gym facilities coming forward recently in Great Blakenham and Stowmarket, which will also help to fill detailed shortfalls. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. Councillor Brewster, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I too commend this report, and I think it's an excellent report, and will do the job really, really well when we get down to it and get through it. Just a bit of information, I suppose, really. But I noted that the Pure Gym in Stowmarket, which was in the former Aldi building there, which Mid Suffolk purchased, was due to be open soon. I can now confirm that it will be open tomorrow, and I will be at the opening. This is a very welcome addition to the town, as it will be open 24 hours a day. It will provide another source of activity relating to our health and wellbeing strategy, and also, of course, the leisure and physical activity strategy. So it's a very good company, and they've worked. The pandemic held them up, otherwise they'd have been opened some time ago, but they are opening tomorrow.
Great, thank you very much for that. Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Chair. As somebody who was part of the original working party back in 2017 and also on this one, I'm really, really proud to see this come through now. This is a total revamp of the previous strategy. And I was privileged to be able to go to the opening of the Stowmarket new gym last week or the week before. The kit there is absolutely fantastic, and as a regular user, certainly pre-pandemic, of the Stowmarket Leisure Centre, the kit there is absolutely fantastic. It's really, really good. And also as a regular user of Debenham Sports and Leisure, excuse me, a regular user of Debenham Sports and Leisure, the kit there has also had a total revamp. And Debenham Leisure Centre have also asked me to pass on their thanks to our officer team and our communities team for the support that they've received, certainly over the last 18 months, certainly during COVID, not just in terms of keeping our communities engaged, but also enabling them to carry on supporting the wider community. So Debenham Leisure Centre are really grateful for this funding. Councillor Wellham identified the fact that we're trying to keep physical activity as well as mental and emotional spirits high, shall we say. And while we don't want people driving as much as we do, you do need to bear in mind, if you go to a Zumba class, which Councillor Wellham obviously admits he doesn't know what that is, but whether it's Zumba or Pilates or HIIT session, whatever it is, whether you're on the treadmill for an hour, cycling home for 4 miles after you've been on the treadmill for an hour is quite difficult when you've got really tired legs. So, you don't want to be pulling your workout session because you have to cycle home. So cycling is really important, but certainly for me, the road is too dangerous to cycle to Debenham Leisure Centre. And while we think of Stowmarket as being quite flat, in actual fact, it isn't if you're on a bike. It can result in really tired legs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morley. Does anyone else have any comment they wish to make? If not, I just want to say a few words myself. This is clearly an excellent and comprehensive document, and I think the Sports, Leisure and Culture Consultancy need to be commended for the work that they've put into this, but also our officers as well, and all of the members that took part in the workshops. The importance of this is, as you've heard, quite significant for both districts, and also, and that's I think brought out in the fact that 3 of our 6 strategic priorities are touched by this, not just well-being in terms of improving health outcomes, but the community strategy, because it really does or will help our communities thrive, not just for the individuals and residents in those communities, but also the volunteers and the community leaders who will be working together. And so that's a hugely important factor for our communities. And finally, of course, the economic strategy. The clearly objectives there that this will meet in terms of improving our economic performance across the 2 districts. So this really is a very important and very welcome piece of work. But having said that, I think it's probably now time we move to the vote on this, members. So if I may ask for the vote to be opened on this, please.
Yes, Chair. Members, if you go to the electronic vote on your app and scroll down to the blue line, the vote should be in progress shortly. Just a moment. It started now. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. That is 7 votes for Babergh Cabinet and 9 votes for Mid-Suffolk Cabinet. Such unanimous.
Sorry, thank you very much. Thanks. Okay, so the next 2 items are Mid-Suffolk only, so I'll hand over to Councillor Morley now.
Thank you, Chair. So the next item is MCA 21/10, and it's the Needham Market Neighbourhood Plan. I'm going to invite the Mid-Suffolk Cabinet Member for Planning to introduce this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Excuse me. Members will by now be familiar with the format of this report, which updates the Cabinet on the progress of Needham Market's emerging neighbourhood plan now that the formal examination has been completed. The report sets out 2 recommendations, namely that the Town Council be instructed to modify their plan in accordance with the independent examiner's recommendations, and secondly, that subject to satisfactory completion of the modifications, approval is given for the plan to be advanced to a local referendum. Excuse me again. It's taken a number of years to reach this stage, but we have now a plan before us that, in its own words, seeks to give residents a voice in the sustainable development of the town. As noted by the examiner, the plan chooses not to make any housing allocations of its own, preferring instead to leave that to the district level. But it does at least explain that the minimum housing requirement for this area has already been met through existing permissions and through sites allocated in the emerging joint local plan. Instead, it sets out 10 policies that look at the mix of house types needed, good design, employment and town centre opportunities, community infrastructure, heritage and landscape matters. It is therefore very much about putting in place a foundation on which the Town Council may wish to build in any future iteration of the plan. As set out in paragraph 4.5 of the report, where the examiner has found it necessary to make modifications, they are mostly about improving policy wording to provide clarity for decision makers and to retain a suitable degree of flexibility so that the future development is not stifled. Other minor modifications include bringing the supporting text up to date in terms of references to the joint local plan. I'm therefore pleased to be able to propose the recommendations at section 3 of the report and urge Cabinet to agree that this plan now be advanced to a local referendum at the earliest available opportunity. And may I please ask for a seconder for my proposal.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Brewster, you're seconding?
Yes, no more than to say this one.
Thank you very much. So we'll move to questions now from Cabinet members. Does anybody have any questions on this item? Any questions from any other non-Cabinet members? No? So we're moving to debate. Does anybody wish to start us off? Councillor Fleming.
Thank you. I thought I should say something because I live near Needham Market and I go to Needham Market a lot and use it. It's a wonderful little town. And I absolutely welcome its neighbourhood plan. I just want to mention the importance of design, which is one of the things this neighbourhood plan does try to emphasise. And I know not everyone in the room is a reader of The Spectator, but on the latter part of June, there was a very good article about design at a national level and how the main house builders in England are simply ignoring the pleadings of districts, residents, politicians, etc., in terms of trying to really change the architectural approach to building and design at, you would call, desk level, and really try and provide housing that is up to 21st century standard, that is built for the long term and that fits into the areas where the regional differences in this country that residents are asking architects to take note of, and also to design houses that local people can buy and live in. I live in Creating St Mary, and there are about 5 absolutely enormous houses going up at the bottom of my road. The price there is being asked is almost £900,000 each, and I fail to see how we are really putting into action what we talk about all the time. So I would really like to see our neighbourhood plans, not just Needham Market neighbourhood plan, but the neighbourhood plans as a vehicle for really engaging with builders, developers and architects to give us what we're begging for. It's not that we don't want more houses, we do, but we want houses that are nice, that are thoughtful and that are built for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So I'll now ask the Governance Officer to conduct the vote for Mid-Suffolk members. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Member, if you can open the electronic vote in your electronic agenda, please, and scroll down to the item. You will see that the vote is in blue and it should now be in progress. Chair, that's 9 votes for, and that's unanimous.
Thank you. Moving on to item 10, this is a resolution to exclude the public, which term includes the press, and this is to consider whether, pursuant to Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, the public should be excluded from the meeting for the business specified below on the grounds that if the public were present during this item, it is likely that there would be disclosure to them of exempt information as indicated against this item. The author of the report proposed to be considered in Part 2 of the agenda is satisfied that the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. Can I have a proposer from Mid-Suffolk, please? Councillor Gort, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Flatman, thank you very much. If the Governance Officer could now conduct the vote, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Mid-Suffolk members, if you open up the vote on your modern.gov app and scroll down to the resolution, you will see the line is lit up in blue for voting, and the vote is now in progress. Chair, that is 9 votes for. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So moving
Okay, thank you everyone. We're now on a Baber only Cabinet meeting. Mid-Suffolk items have finished, and so Mid-Suffolk members have now left. So we're now moving on to the next item, which is item 9 on the Baber Cabinet agenda, which is paper BCA 2111, which is an update on 5 neighbourhood plans in Baber, and these are neighbourhood plans for Assington, Chelmerdiston, Little Waldingfield, Newton and Watfield. Now ask the Cabinet Member for Planning to introduce this item. Councillor Arthey.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it's been a while since I've presented a neighbourhood plan to you, and as you say, we've got 5 today. And yes, you've identified them as Assington, Chelmerdiston, Little Waldingfield, Newton and Watfield. I'm particularly pleased to present the Little Waldingfield one, which is in my ward, and wanted to acknowledge the work that one of their councillors, Tim Shepherd, has done to bring this to us. I think it was 2 years ago when I sat in a parish council meeting and he said to me, I think we'll have our neighbourhood plan before you have your JLP. And it's been a close thing, but full credit to him, he's right, they will. All 5 of the plans have undergone their independent examination, and as set out in the report, your approval is sought for each plan to advance to local referendum. The advancement to local referendum is really an administrative step, and at some time in the future I think we'll be talking about whether it's actually necessary for these to come to Cabinet just to sort of okay the move to referendum. The general context relevant to each plan is set out in section 4, and it explains that our officers have concluded that the Council should accept the examiner's recommendations, and if we agree that today, they will be obliged to publish a decision notice to that effect, and you ought to note that it's the responsibility of the individual parish councils to modify their plans, which will then be checked and signed off under delegated powers by the corporate manager for strategic planning. The timing of these is probably quite good because they've been able to tap in to the evidence that underpinned our JLP, and they will of course be coming forward hopefully at around about the same time. The key stages and a summary of modifications to note with links to the relevant documents and reports are set out in the appendices, and I trust that these are self-explanatory. What I can update you with is that all parishes are committed to modifying their plans in accordance with the examiner's reports, so they've effectively preempted the first part of the recommendations before you today. So it's the 5 plans that I'm asking you to approve for transmission on to a local referendum. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Arthey. May I have a seconder, please, from Baber? Councillor Busby. Are there any questions on these neighbourhood plans? From Cabinet? No. Any questions from other members, Baber, present? No. Oh, Councillor Maybury, you have a question?
Thank you, Chairman. Do I have to ask a question or can I make a comment?
You have to ask a question.
I'll try and formulate it then. It's very pleasing to see these 5 neighbourhood plans that have come before the Cabinet today. I'd also like to say that there is always a question about how these are completed, and the acknowledgement of all of the work from volunteers I think is very necessary. And I'm just asking if it is possible to actually always comment from the Cabinet or from whoever that everyone who has taken part, not just perhaps 1 or 2, but everyone who has taken part in these neighbourhood plans should be commended. I think I've got round the question. Thank you.
Yes, that is a question, and I think we all concur with that, that they should. Councillor Arthey.
Yeah, if it's a question, I'll give an answer.
and that is yes, but perhaps we ought to save our final congratulations until the referendum is complete and the plan is adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Arthey. Right, well, I'll now open this item up for debate. Does anyone from Babergh Cabinet wish to make any comment about any of these neighbourhood plans? No? Well, then before we go to the vote, I will just make one minor comment. Councillor Arthey was pleased to see the Little Waldingfield neighbourhood plan. I'm actually pleased to see the Chelmer-Diston one. Chelmer is the village of my birth, and it contains Pin Mill, which arguably, or certainly I would argue, is the most beautiful part of the whole district. So I'm very pleased that Chelmer has got, or is going to go ahead and have an adopted neighbourhood plan. That would be very good for the community there. So having said that, I think I'll now ask the Governance Officer for us to be able to go to the electronic vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. If members would open the electronic vote in their electronic agenda and scroll down to the item for the neighbourhood plans, the vote is now in progress. Chair, that's 7 votes for. That's unanimous.
Thank you. Okay then, moving on, the next item, and I'm sure this is one that a lot of people viewing will be interested in. Item 10, paper BCA 2112, Bellevue Sudbury, the new park entrance and facilities. Now, this report is in two parts, and we have part one, which is the open report and Appendix A, but part two, which are Appendices B and C, are confidential. I have noted that actually in the main part of the report it does refer to Appendix A as one of the confidential ones, but that's a minor correction there. But I'll now ask the Cabinet Member for Economic Growth to introduce the report. So Councillor Holt, over to you, please.
Thank you, Chair. All members have had the report in front of them, hopefully had time to read it and fully take in its entirety. The purpose of this report is to seek Cabinet's recommendation to Council. It seeks approval in addition to the capital expenditure programme to create a retaining wall structure, new high quality, secure and accessible park entrance and new cafe/toilet block facilities to change in places standard at the Bellevue Park site in Sudbury. Also, forward funding of essential works until the capital receipt is secured, including creating the retaining wall between both sites, design work and work to submit a planning application on the park, cafe and toilets. Cabinet resolved on the 11th of March 2021 that up to 100% of the proceeds from the sale of the adjacent site will be diverted to ensure the creation of the new Bellevue Park entrance, cafe and toilet facilities. We now wish to move forward these works as the Council is committed to enhancing the park and facilities within it and better connecting the park with the wider town centre. The new entrance will be fully accessible and we are creating an adult changing places facility within the new toilets, which will only be the second in Sudbury, to make sure Bellevue is a place which would enable all disabled people to go out with the same dignity as everyone else, to enjoy community life, socialise and travel. We have established a stakeholder group, including the Town Council and Sudbury Society, to help us take forward the design and implementation of this fantastic new opportunity for Sudbury. We will also be working with a landscape architect to come up with a master plan for the park to enhance the current experience, and we intend to hold a public exhibition in the park later in the summer to show the new proposals prior to a planning application and look forward to engaging with the public on this. We want to make Bellevue Park an even better place for Sudbury, for our communities now and in the future, and this project is the first step in delivering on that vision. The report also includes updated information on the overall delivery programme milestones and timeline for the site. Chairman, I recommend items in the report 3.1, 2, 3, 4. And would ask for a seconder for those, please.
Thank you, Councillor Holt. Councillor Osborne, you seconding?
I am, Mr Chairman. I'm very happy to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Baber members, are there any questions on any aspect of the report? Bearing in mind that if you have questions on appendices B and C, which are the timeline and the costs, then I would ask you to wait until we go into confidential session, should we need to. But are there any questions so far on the report here? If not, I just have one quick question, and it'll be for Fiona actually. The risk, referring to the step-in rights, what would be the consequences, financial or otherwise, should those step-in rights have to be activated by the developer?
Yeah, I mean, they are a last resort step-in the event that we don't do any of the things that are stated in the contract, but it would be to the value of the retaining wall works, which is, I have to defer to Lee to the exact amount, but I have to be careful about quoting exact amounts because there's a lot more detailed design and costings to be done, but it's for those works.
Thank you. If there are no questions from the Cabinet members, are there any other members of Baber here who wish to ask a question? Councillor Maybury.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I have two, if I may. Under 3.4, to be successful, this proposal actually needs planning permission. Does this make the Cabinet, all of the Cabinet members, predetermined so they will not be able to sit on the planning committee, please? That's the first question.
Okay, I'll pass over to the monitoring officer to answer that one, I think.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, predetermination is a consideration for each individual member to make. However, I can't see anything in today's decision that would predetermine a member from a planning consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Councillor Maybury, your next question.
Thank you for that answer. My second question is, considering the proposal is to put the new accessible entrance along what is Cornard Road, how can safety be assured at that point, in consideration that it's a very narrow road and there's not much area to play with? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maybury. Certainly we will be talking to highways and others, but Councillor Holt, do you want to pick up on that one? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think it's a little bit incorrect to say it's along Cornard Road. I think that's a statement that isn't factually correct. It's offset from Cornard Road, yes, but it certainly isn't off Cornard Road. And as Chair has already pointed out, any application for the entrance will be a planning process decision. So all safety issues in that planning application will be picked up and checked with highways, and should there be any concerns, they'll be addressed in the application before it's put forward to members to decide in the Cabinet meeting. I don't know whether, planning meeting. I don't know if Fiona wants to add anything to that.
No, not really, Councillor Holt. I think you've said it.
Councillor Maybury, do you have another?
Yes, I do actually. In the previous consultation that we looked at this morning, which was sport and leisure, there was considerable comment about the amount of housing that's being increased in Cornard. The road that I'm talking about and where this entrance is proposed is actually one of the main routes from Cornard into town. Well, considering that it gets quite congested at the moment, and in consideration of the proposal of new homes that is coming forward, and in consideration that currently there is not any alternative travel route, is this not the wrong place to put the entrance?
Chair?
Councillor Holt?
I must say I didn't think we were here to debate about the position of the entrance. I thought it was actually about the money to actually go forward with the process of delivering the entrance. No, it isn't, in my opinion. I think this is a great scheme, and the one in front of you needs delivering, and we as a Cabinet have made that decision to deliver it, and this is all part of the process of doing it.
Thank you, Councillor Holt. Councillor Ayres, did you have your hand up?
There we go. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Yes, a lot of people in Sudbury are worried about they think they're going to lose space, and I'm trying to reassure them that they're not. But I have had some people concerned about the trees, and from we had from Churchill, and I think there's a King Crimson maple. It's 200 years old, and I'm assured that that will remain, and that we really are going to look at this very carefully as to how much green space there is. Is that right?
I will pass over to Councillor Holt.
I was going to say that I don't know whether Fiona or Lee want to
pick up. The only thing I would like to say before passing over to Fiona then is that the trees are a matter for the planning application by Churchill for the retirement homes. We're discussing the park entrance here today and our funding of that. But Fiona, did you want to add anything?
Well, I was going to say that actually, but also just to, I suppose, reiterate what Michael Holt said earlier, that this is the first piece, sort of piece in the jigsaw to improve the park. So there's other plans that we have in terms of looking at a wider master plan to make the park even better than it is at the moment.
Thank you, Fiona. Councillor Owen.
Sorry about that. Not sure if this, I'm not mentioning any money, but I'm just mentioning that I believe it's horse before the cart in mind, that Churchill has not got planning yet, and we shouldn't be borrowing, or we shouldn't be looking at borrowing any money, considering when Suffolk has allegedly lost 12 million already. We have waited a long time for this park entrance, a few months after the planning decision. That would not hurt. That's more of a quote, that we shouldn't be looking at borrowing money at the moment, and I'm asking the Cabinet members to look at this very carefully. And there's another thing, the questions from Lee and Robert. Could I have the answers from Councillor Councillor Holt? Sorry, I'm mod duck calf. If you wouldn't mind, I do apologise. If that's all right, if I can do that.
So you want written answers?
Written on there, so we can then, because we couldn't hear.
I understand. Yeah.
Is that that's all right?
That's fine.
Please?
Yes. But and actually, the answer to Councillor Lindsay's question would have covered the issue as to why we needed to forward fund this.
Yes.
So the full response there will be provided to you, so you can see that.
Yes, please.
Just one final comment, Councillor Owen. Sifco hasn't lost 12 million.
I said alleged. I did say alleged.
Yeah.
That was in the paper, wasn't it?
Yeah, and we were not here to discuss.
No.
But I understand. Yeah.
That was alleged.
Thank you. Right. Where are we? Yes, so the questions. Debate. I'll open this up for debate now, Cabinet members. Does anyone want to start the debate? Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, if I can just say on the point that Councillor Owen's just done, I'm amazed. You know, we get criticised as a Cabinet and as members for not investing in our town in Sudbury. And here we are proposing to do that today, and it's still we're being challenged. I find it very strange. But anyway, on the debate side, I'm sure that once this work is completed, people will be able to see the benefits that this will provide to Sudbury and its communities. It's difficult to imagine at the moment, but when you actually see it physically in place, I know that we will take a lot of people with us, and they will actually see the benefits to the town in respects of the environment, in respects of people being able to use a much more pleasant area than they currently do, and also the tourism aspect as well, and making it look nice from the town. So as I've already given my support in seconding this recommendation, again, I repeat, I think this is a fantastic way forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Does anyone else wish to say anything? Councillor Arthey and then Councillor McCraw.
Yeah, just really referencing back to the sport and leisure strategy that we approved earlier on, and I said then that it actually was quite a pleasant surprise that in 4 years we achieved so much. Here we've got a site that's been a problem area for 30 years, ever since I've been on the council, and we've had no real solution throughout all of that time, and now we have one. And so I really just wanted to say it's full credit to Councillor Holt and to yourself for your resilience in the face of continued criticism, that we've actually got now a plan. We've got a plan that looks as though it's going to be funded, and as sorry, who said it? She wasn't it, Jan? Councillor Osborne. As Councillor Osborne said, in a few years' time, I think that everybody will look back and they'll look at this as a real achievement. I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Arthey. Councillor McCraw.
Thank you, Chair. I think the answer given by Councillor Holt to Councillor Lindsay's question describes exactly the reason why we need to make this decision in front of us. It is something that is a necessary step. It has to be done in a time scale, and we can see in the first appendix a description of the time scales involved, and they're quite tight windows in some cases. And as has been referred to by Fiona, there are a series of steps to be gone through, and this is whatever one thinks, this is a necessary step. We aren't going to do it unless we go through these steps in the correct order. So I shall be supporting this.
Thank you, Councillor McCraw. Councillor Busby.
Okay, I think the things that concern me on here are we seem to take decisions in advance of knowing all of the information. For instance, we selected this scheme before we knew the costs. We only had one half of the equation, which was the income. Well, they could have offered 10 times that, but if it costs 10 times that in terms of costs, then it's not a very good investment. And I'm concerned that we haven't yet got a full schedule of potential costs. The reason I don't think that we should necessarily be doing this now, I appreciate that whatever scheme we go forward with, there will be works required to provide a decent entrance at the front of the park, but we don't know how much work would be required if this scheme didn't go ahead. There's a lot of additional cost involved in shearing up an area on the park if you're going to put a 4-storey building next to it. If you're not going to put a 4-storey building next to it, then maybe you don't need retaining walls. Maybe you just need the area landscaped. So that would make a significant difference on the cost. And we've never had what I call a clear comparison of schemes. We get presented with one scheme which is supposed to be of benefit, which it looks okay in certain ways, but it's not compared to anything else. We don't know. We get information drip-fed to us as we take the decisions on this kind of timeline. So what happens if they don't get planning permission? Have we spent the money, committed the money to spending more than we need to on the park's works? Can we recoup it? Do we have to start again? I mean, it just seems to me that we kind of rush through these decisions just so that we can say, yes, we've got something done, we're desperate to get something done. And I think we are desperate to get something done. But as the person that's supposed to be in charge of assets and investments, I'm concerned that we're not necessarily investing in a wise way at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Busby. I think Councillor Holt would probably wish to come back on that. I do understand your concerns. But we have made a decision on how we want to proceed with this. Without wishing to reopen the debate that we had back in March, we had 6 options, and we chose to proceed with the one that, in our view, met a range of criteria best of all. And those criteria weren't just the potential income, but crucially, one of them was around deliverability. And the one we've proceeded with certainly met that deliverability criterion far better than the others. And deliverability is key to this because, as everyone has said, we do finally need to do something after 30 years. We don't want another 5, 10, 30 years of nothing happening with this site, simply because we don't have the foresight, the strength of purpose, and the ability to make decisions to actually proceed and do something for the benefit of the town. But I'll pass over to Councillor Holks. I know he wishes to come back on this.
Thank you. The decision taken in March was quite clear of our approach to this, and we haven't differed from that at all. The funding that you see in front of you today is to deliver that. Yes, you have to spend to get costs, so you can't just come up with a figure out of the sky. You have to spend the money, you have to invest in that, and there is a cost. So yes, we're forward spending. I'm not sure where you got 4 stories from, but we'll wait for the plan application to see if that's correct. Our ambition is to deliver this park entrance, and the scheme, I believe, is deliverable, and it will be a fantastic park available to everyone with great facilities for the future. If a plan application was refused for the Churchills, then other funding methods may be sought. We're here to deliver the entrance. We're not here to deliver a retirement home. So the entrance is our deliverable item, and that is what we're focused on. We've got to put our own planning application in, and that goes through the planning process equally as does the retirement living centre. So yeah, I think it's very important that we understand where we are, and we have to, if we're going to deliver this, full fund it, and I see no other alternative. If you want to just park it to one side, wait for the planning process to go through with Churchill, you'll be here in 2 years' time probably debating the same thing or not, who knows. But I think the park entrance is something we want to deliver, and we can deliver it, and we intend to deliver it, and we're determined to do that.
I agree. It's how much we spend in doing that. That's my concern. If we decide now that we're going ahead and we're going to deliver a park entrance which marries in with the Churchill development, then that's going to cost us, whatever it was, a certain amount of money. If that development doesn't go ahead, we may need to spend half that amount, but we're still going to have to fund it. And that's my concern, is that at the moment we don't know yet what kind of park entrance is best for that area. If the Churchill development goes ahead, then the one that we're proposing now might be the best one. But we don't know that the Churchill development is going to go ahead, in which case it might be the wrong kind of entrance. It might be the most expensive entrance that we don't need. And until we know that the Churchill development is the one that's going ahead, I don't think we should make that decision. We shouldn't commit ourselves to providing something which is engineeringly superb when we don't necessarily need it.
I think my response to Councillor Lindy does sum it up, and you can't get away from the facts, Councillor Busby. You have to do this to enable you to come up with a true costing, and that is what we intend to do. Come up with a true costing to deliver this entrance. But to do that, you have to spend some money up front, and that's what this is about. Fiona, did you want to come in or leave?
If I can get my mask off. Yes, so the forward funding element is not likely to be the cost of the entire works. It is, as Councillor Holt said, we need to move forward to a detailed design and detailed costing process, and that costs some money. In addition, should the Churchill scheme receive planning consent and then complete shortly afterwards, we have to be on site doing the retaining wall works within 3 months. We would not be able to appoint a contractor in that time if we hadn't done the planning application and pre-work. So a lot of the forward funding relates to pre-work, design work and the planning application process. The only other point I think is worth just mentioning is that Cabinet have already resolved to sell the area of land within the red line, and this park is the land that falls outside of that. So it's not for me to say whether it will go forward or not in terms of the Churchill scheme, but if it didn't, you have still resolved to sell that area of land under the Cabinet decision in March, and the land we're talking about here is the land that falls outside of that.
Thank you, Fiona. And yes, one of the risks actually does address this point and does allude to the fact that an alternative best consideration disposal would be necessary for that area should the agreement with Churchill not proceed. So, therefore, notwithstanding whatever happens there, we will still need to do this work, and we will still need to forward fund to meet that 3-month timescale that Fiona has described. So, does anyone else from Babergh Cabinet wish to make any comment? Councillor Malvisi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think this is an opportunity to remove an eyesore from the centre of Sudbury, which then links up with environmental issues and well-being issues. It links into the leisure strategy, the solar parks at Kingfisher, sustainable travel, and I think it's a very good report and I highly recommend it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. If nobody else wishes to make a comment from the Cabinet, all I will say in summing up is I do agree with everything my colleagues have said. This is our first real good opportunity to really do something with this site and provide a new exciting entrance to the park, open up more land for people to use, make sure that the park is accessible from the town centre, visible from the town centre. Sorry, and where was I? Yes, the entrance. It'll be a wonderful entrance for the town, and will really help bring new vitality to the park. It'll allow people more people, I think, to use the park. They'll see that it's there, and I do understand the concerns about the junction and the highways access, and clearly all of these issues will be addressed. It's not for us to do that now, as Councillor Holt said. That's part of the planning process to make sure that the right facilities are put in place to allow safe access across that junction. And I think this is excellent. This is our opportunity to show to Sudbury that we are doing something good for the town. Having said that, now I think it's probably time to move to the vote then. So I'll ask the governance officer if we can conduct the electronic vote, please. Sorry, unless anyone wishes to go into the confidential session to discuss the two appendices. No? Good.
Thank you, Chair. If members could open the vote in their electronic agenda and scroll down to the blue line that indicates that the vote is now in progress. Chair, that is 6 votes for and 1 abstention.
Thank you for that. Okay, thanks members. That brings us to the end of today's meeting. So next meeting will be Monday the 2nd of August at 10:30. Thank you everyone.